Welcome to another night of Connected Wellness Wednesday with my good friend, Pete Bombaci from the GenWell Project. Pete, how are you doing tonight?
I'm not too bad, Gooch. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I know we got lots of great topics to talk about. And then, of course, a Leaf game to go catch.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. In Chicago. There's a lot we're going to talk about to Toronto tonight, and obviously it's the Chicago situation. I'll bring you up to speed, and we can discuss that at the end part of the show. Listen, Fired Up Network. I want to thank them for being. I met with them today, Terry Rivard. Pete, there's going to be a lot of great things coming up in the next 2 weeks. You're going to be a part of it once I get it all put together. The GenWell Project, Connected Mental Health, Stop Concussions, and all the great things we're doing together. It's going to get bigger.
I love it, brother. This is exciting. It's about time.
Larger.
We're coming out of this global pandemic, and we need messages like connected, stop concussions, and GenWell more than ever.
Well, here's the thing that I want to say. You do an amazing job. You do these incredible statements, and I'm going to pull this up. Being injured is tough. You must miss these guys. You still text guys. It's just not the same being in the lineup. And that's Jack Campbell from the Toronto Maple Leafs. I know it's your favorite team. I love the quote. We're going to talk about that. Obviously, being a pro player, I was very seldom out of the lineup due to injuries. Thank goodness some guys get lucky. I was one of those. But I'm suffering from those injuries now. And that's one of the topics that we kind of not don't talk about. I didn't play in the National Hockey League, but I played a lot of hockey through my life, and I got a lot of injuries. And we see what just happened with Jimmy Hayes. God rest his soul, and of course our condolences go to his family. Where those injuries and that ability not to get through it all, unfortunately, passed away with fentanyl in his system. I'm sure you heard the story, very tragic. And I think that's the one thing that happens here. When Jimmy left the game, he missed the guys. Somebody once asked me, Pete, and you can actually talk about this yourself. You play in a beer league and you miss your guys and love your guys over there, and you miss them. Think about being a pro hockey player and the light switch is turned off. Your days are over. That's it. You're not in the dressing room having a beer in the shower talking about how you guys went to war in the trenches, or you're not having the adulation, Gouche, Gouche. You score a goal, that adrenaline. There's no better drug. There's no stronger drug. I believe I've never taken drugs, so I'm only throwing this out there. Than that adulation of 20,000 people screaming your name, and it's gone. Love to hear that. That's what Campbell's kind of testing to, that he wouldn't be in the dressing room because he's hurt. So they don't want everybody in the dressing room before the games and that. So you get out of that routine, and that's what I know you're going to talk about now. That routine is so important in our lives. Whether you play pro hockey, you're a lawyer, a doctor, a dentist, or a garbage man.
Yeah, and I think there's 2 points. First off, there's chronic illness and there's acute illness. So when we break a leg, that takes us immediately out of the game, whatever that game is for you. And when you're taken out of those normal routines, I had a quote there from Jack Campbell. It's funny. I watched was it 5 episodes of All or Nothing? By the way, I thought that was an amazing series, and a buddy of mine, Dave Brady at Cream Productions, was responsible for the series, shot it for Prime here in Toronto. So a big shout out to Dave Brady. But I think what was really inspiring for me was, and we'll call it the vulnerability that these two guys showed. And we obviously talked about Jack Campbell before, but now let's talk about Big Joe Thornton. He's talking about how isolated and lonely he felt and how disconnected he felt when he wasn't able to be with the guys. And to your point, I can't even imagine, even as you described it there, Gooch, when you said 1 minute, 20,000 people are talking, and you paused and there was nothing but silence. And I sense that that's probably the feeling. And we've seen it from many of the retired players and how things go after that. And I think it's Stu Gavin, who I met once, and he was doing
Beautiful
a program
man,
where he was helping other players deal with not only their financial, but long-term planning of their lives post
transition.
transition. And I just think that is, and I'm sure that the Players Union is focused on that and doing what they can to help people. And of course, Jim Hayes, people are going to slip through the cracks, but we need to continually reinforce this for people that, hey, life is a journey. You're going to have ups and downs. Let's make sure that we're building those connections in that community around us, because when we go through those downs, that's when our community is going to mean more to us than ever before.
No question. And you mentioned the broken leg scenario. How about Charlie Morton last night for the Atlanta Braves? I don't know if you saw it. Took a line drive off his shin and broke one of his bones in his shin area and continued on pitching. I don't know how. I don't know the whole story, but he pitched through it and he actually striked out one of the top players from the Houston Astros, and played a couple of innings with a broken leg. It's just
Wow.
absolutely, it's almost Bobby Bonish.
I was going to say that's Bobby Bond all over again.
I want to go back to this. And Pete, when you're injured, you don't go on the road. So you kind of lose touch with the guys. And it's something you don't want to go through. And it's Jumbo Joe. And I think somebody's got to learn how to spell. It's not how you spell Thornton. But
Oh, did I do it wrong? Oh, apologies, Joe.
Pete, no, Pete, I Googled the name and I couldn't find him. No, gosh, listen, how many times I say a name wrong. But and you and I have fun with this. Obviously, it's Wellness Wednesdays. We want to keep it upbeat. There are some dark topics we're going to talk about in a few minutes. Obviously, with the Blackhawks, Chicago Blackhawks story, it's just horrific. It is 2021, and we're dealing with something that was 2010, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. I wanted to stay on the topic of, we talked about that isolation, that exclusion, not inclusion. And I think that's really important here with these two. These are just hockey players that are surrounded by a team, and then all of a sudden they're taken away. And we're not talking for the whole year. These guys are just out for a couple of weeks, and they're not getting on the plane, flying down to Miami, going out for dinner with the boys, play a game. That camaraderie, just like you do in beer league. It's the same feeling.
Yep.
It's just a little slower. No,
Well,
it's a lot slower.
And not as many fans in the state in the crowd.
Hey, the fans are all here, kid. You just got to keep them right there. So talk to us about that. When, obviously, we can't compare each other, like us, to Joe Thornton and to Jack Campbell. But if you put it in perspective, take out the crowd. They're playing because they love the game. You play because you love the game. They played because they love their teammates, or most of their teammates. And that's what you do. Talk to us about that isolation that you have gone through personally over the last 14 months.
Well, I was just going to say, look at what's happened since the start of the pandemic. And I was at a conference this morning, and it was interesting. It's called McKay CEO Forums. It's a collection of CEOs and senior leaders across this country come together. It was the first event that I'd been to, and many of the people in that room. And frankly, I wrote down a quote from the gentleman who was speaking. Bill, he said, there'll be time for networking because we also want to do it so desperately. And I think this is the interesting thing is we talk about working remotely and how people are so thrilled to be working from home. And yet I think the growing desire from people is to get back and get connected again. And I think we are all experiencing what it might be like in the small form, but in a much larger form as we're working from home. But I also throw this on top. And I think this is, again, we can always criticize hockey players. And I know we'll talk about Mitch Marner tonight. But, the reality is, listen to Justin Bieber. We know what happened to Robin Williams. We know what happened to many celebrities in all different types of walks of life. And the reality is they may look. I did a road trip when I was running Miller Genuine Draft at Molson. I went on the road with the Toronto Raptors, flew on the plane down to Cleveland, and you would have done this 1,000 times. And from the outside looking in at the players, it looks like an amazing lifestyle. Life is awesome.
It is.
They got off the plane. They got onto a bus. They went to the hotel. They went to their room. They came down for a meal. They went to a meeting, back to their rooms, back to the bus, over to the game, played the game, over to the hotel, picked up their stuff, went to the airport, and flew out to Milwaukee. There was no connection. There was no opportunity to, the connection is with the team. That's why obviously the bonds are so strong.
Yes.
And when Joe and Jack talk about, being pulled out of that in a moment's notice, whether it's an injury or an illness or whatever the case may be. And I think you start to recognize that, the celebrity lifestyle, although it may look really beautiful from the outside, comes with a lot of challenges. It comes with a lot of benefits, to your point, which you can experience, you have experienced. But I think we also need to recognize that when Justin Bieber writes a song called Lonely, and in the lyrics of that song, he says, look, I have everything. I traveled the world, women, money, you name it, I've got it. And yet I feel more lonely than ever before. And the reality is, loneliness isn't just about being isolated. Loneliness can be, I don't have anybody who sees it the way I do, or
Yep.
doesn't understand the world that I'm living in. So we can be lonely in a crowd as well as being lonely and isolated in a basement or in a corner room or a corner office. So or in the locker room if that's the case in regards to hockey.
Very well put, Pete. And I want to say two things about that. I'm absolutely shocked that you listen to Bieber's music. So that's number
I
one.
love the bee.
And you can almost quote the lyrics, but also, and Donna's just popped up. I'm going to put hers up. I was talking with Steve Morris last night. I had him
Yeah.
on my show, and we talked about concussions and the misinformation that there's a report out of Australia saying funded by the AFL, which is real football. They can't this research project can't see the correlation between head knocks, as they call it, to anxiety and depression. We all know, wow, who the heck came up with that one? And so Stephen Morris once said this to me. He said, what you just said, you can be in a crowd and be lonely. And it brings me back to Donna McCarthy doing this film about my sister. And she's walking down the street and she said, it's the loneliness. The fact that I can't be with my children, it's the loneliness that keeps me doing what I do. And the only friend I got is alcohol. And she once told me that her best friend at one point in her life was a bottle of vodka. Like, how do you get there? So the isolation comes in many different variants. Obviously, Bieber talking like that. I could say that I was lucky. I didn't play. I was not a superstar, even though I think I was. But I played at a high level, and I had adulations from the crowds. I come off the ice. I'm signing autographs. I'm in restaurants. People are buying me beer and buying me presents, and they want me to go to the kid's birthday party. All the things like what Austin Matthews would do, just in maybe a smaller scale. But the pressure for me to perform every night on the ice, because if I didn't, those adulations would start slowly going. So there's a pressure there for Marner, Matthews. We're going to talk about that in a second. And I really think what's important is that we need to understand that Bieber, Marner, Matthews cry just like you and I do when we're sad. Hide when we don't want to be. It's not my time. The difference is that you're not getting paid a larger sum of money to go and do your job in front of 20 million people, or sorry, 20,000 people, obviously with all the crowds on TV. That pressure, not everybody can do it. And on an 82 game scale season, stay at that level at all times. Love to hear your thoughts on that, because I know, and I wanted to say this. Look at who popped in. An incredible, I just met this guy over Instagram, Michael Cox. I think that I'm assuming that Cox, I apologize. He worked with you at Molson's.
Yep.
Okay.
And the funny thing is, Gooch, when I met Mike Koss, I
Cox, right?
was awarding him a salesman award for top sales of Rickard's Red, which I was leading the brand at the time, and I called him Mike Cross. And that is actually how we built the relationship, because he came up and he never let me forget that I got his name wrong as I was giving him an award.
Oh, I've
And
done that many
today,
times.
and again, he continues to have fun and inspire people. As I think on Saturday, he hosted the second of his Anything is Possible traumatic. It's a webcast for traumatic brain injury survivors. So the connected platform is certainly, and Stop Concussions is certainly a part of what Mike is all about now. And he's bringing the traumatic brain injury community together. And it's so great to see him on this broadcast. And I know Robert Wine wanted to be there as well, but he couldn't this weekend. And Robert, I'm sorry I didn't press the record button, because I forgot to record the speakers on Saturday.
Well, last night with Stephen Morris, Michael Koss came up, and he was unbelievable. He sent me. I'm going to get him on this show, no
Awesome.
question. His story, inspirational as is Robert's. And the only thing I got to say, Michael, it's not you guts, Rock. You guys put that. I don't know. Obviously you guys work together, Thornton and Guts. It just.
Yeah, Mike was never much of a speller. I'm just kidding. Hey, can
All
I
right.
just, I want to talk about Donna's comment
Yes,
here.
I wanted to bring this up. Do you want to read it off?
Well, okay. So I don't know anyone except those in the corner offices that want to go back to the office. Younger people, older people, people with their kids, empty nesters all hate the idea of going back to the office. She is totally, totally right, except the bosses. That networking quote was probably from someone in charge. Suicide rate is down because the average person isn't stressed at work, struggling to find time. It is so important for us to keep our minds open that, for older people, we've already built our career. We've already had the benefit of connecting with other people at the office. We had the opportunity to have mentors who guided us as we were looking for it. We need to recognize now that everybody isn't 50 with a developed career. We got a lot of people that are struggling coming out of high school, going to university, and university going to jobs, who've never had a mentor, who've never had somebody give them some coaching. And they're going to sit at home. 28% of the population lives alone in this country.
Yep.
And a lot of them are young people in downtown, centers that are trying to make their way in this world. And we need to recognize as leaders that our sole responsibility is not to the bottom line of the business and doing our job. Your job is also to mentor young people and develop them as human beings, as business leaders, and as people that can add to your business. And so I think Donna's comment is so spot on. And I listened to a group this morning, and I brought that point up specifically because I think it's too easy for the senior people that are at all these conferences and preaching the gospel to say, hey, you need to recognize this isn't just about, people with families and people that are close to retirement saying, hey, I'm all good. I don't ever want to go back to the office and take that drive. I get that. But maybe that's not all your job is. And so I think it's a big wake-up call, and we need to keep reiterating it so that people realize that there's more than just getting the job done in why we need to get back and get connected with one another.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. Thank you for that. And Donna, thank you for sharing this with us, because obviously, there was no manual that came along with this pandemic for us, for all of us, the leaders, parents, us as individuals. At 62, I feel isolated at times myself, and I got a couple of personalities, so they're always talking to each other, and I'm still feeling lonely. And I think it's really important to understand that we all stop judging. We're all in this together, yet we're all in it with a different perspective. And I think sometimes people will look at the people that are introverted and dealing with it the way they deal with it. Nobody taught us how to deal with this, right? And so I think we really have to take a step back and calm the waters a little bit as we go and move forward. I think you just said you were out on an event and you didn't feel comfortable yet. Pete, way before the pandemic, you and I'd be out there. We're the first ones at the, hey, with the water cooler, yakking away. Hey, did you see that goal last night? Hey, I played last night. And all those things that we did naturally, that came to us naturally, isn't so natural right now. Talk to us
No.
about that feeling, because you are one of those precarious, like myself. You're boisterous. You're out there. You're the leader of the pack, and yet you felt uncomfortable. Is, I guess, the best word.
Well, I even had to send a note last night to the lady who was organizing it. And I said, could you do me a favor? I'm just trying to set myself up here. How many people will be in the room? What are the protocols? How do I know that I'm going to be? And so there's a situation where I'll even say I could have some control because I was able to figure out, okay, who are the people? How many will there be? What are the protocols before I ever left my home? When you think about going to the grocery store or going to the office or going to, some of the offices are trying to put some infrastructure around who goes and when and things like that. But when you think about going out into everyday life, those structures aren't there. And I think that's probably the thing that's going to continue to create the anxiety in people. as we, although it looks like we're, I don't want to jinx anything, but it looks like we're getting back to a good place.
Yes.
And therefore, the confidence is starting to come back. That's the only reason I would have considered going to this breakfast meeting this morning. But hopefully, as we continue to see low numbers, everybody starts to feel more comfortable of going for a coffee. Maybe not doing pickup of your groceries, but actually going into the grocery store,
Yes.
saying hi to the bank teller, starting to go back to some of the rituals that we had before, because some of those things are the only outing for elderly people, for people that are struggling. And I also think there was another great point this morning, Gooch. Sorry, just to run on here for a
Oh,
second.
gosh.
But a lot of people, there was a conversation saying that there's a lot of people who've enjoyed working from home. If you're a marginalized community, so you might be an immigrant, you might be a new Canadian, you might be LGBTQ, you might have a disability of some sort. And the reality is, for some of those people, they feel less marginalized when they stay at home.
Good point.
And that's a wonderful thing, except when those that aren't marginalized in the office say that, okay, you stay at home, we'll just continue to do what we're doing.
Right.
It almost gives them a break. It almost says, oh, you don't have to change because we'll just leave the marginalized people at home. And I'm sorry, that is not the solution here.
No,
when
it
we
isn't.
want to build an inclusive society, it's about changing the leadership. It's about changing the system so that those people don't feel that the only option is to stay at home. We should all feel comfortable walking through the doors of that office, of that business, of that grocery store, whatever the case may be. So just when I heard that this morning, and people highlighting the positive of the pandemic and digital technology, yeah, short term, I get it. That's a wonderful thing that they were able to do that. But we cannot settle and say that it's okay for marginalized people to stay home while everybody else goes to the office.
And I did want to say, when you think about this, at 62, we've lost a couple of years. I know me, so 2 years are gone. Like February's coming up. It'll be February 2020 when we kind of all got locked up. And I'm just shocked. We think about our lives, but think about those young kids, 18, 19, or just at that beginning of life, which set so many good things for us together, a very big learning moment. Look at what they've had to go through. And that's why I do believe there will be not a pandemic, but an epidemic of maybe not specific mental illness, but certainly mental health issues. And that's why, connected with Wellness Wednesdays and, of course, with the GenWell Project, we hope as we come out of that, we'll do more GenWell Project parties, and we'll do connected parties, and we'll bring people out and at their pace. Not everybody has to rush out and be euphoric. Listen, I want to change topics a little bit because I think this one's really important to see how the pandemic has certainly brought the good and certainly the bad out of us. Obviously, we all love sports. Obviously, some of us love the Toronto Maple Leafs, Pete, and my wife, and so many others. And I am not a Leaf hater. I would love to see the Leafs win, keep my wife happy. And of course, for Wayne Kelly, his bar does very well when the Leafs go deep into the playoffs. And he's such a good guy. He deserves it. But just these recent situation with the Leafs, they're in a little bit of a losing streak. They have not played well. There are 4 players, as we know, that are earning ridiculous amounts of money. I just want to clarify for people the understanding of it. I played a hockey game, and I played for the love of the game. I was lucky that somebody actually wanted to pay me for me to go and play. And yeah, I had to barter back and forth to how much I felt I was worth or they were worth and what they could pay me or what they couldn't pay me. And what I found interesting on all of this with Mitch Marner getting absolutely crushed on the internet right at this moment, it gave me a chance to reflect. Nobody twisted my arm to play hockey, and nobody twisted my arm to sign the contract. Whether it was 100,000 or 10,000, I signed the contract. I didn't have an agent. I did it on my own. Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, most of these guys have agents that take away that emotional part. The teams negotiate. They do it with an agent. They come back. The agent comes to the player and says, hey, listen, this is the offer. I think you should take it. I don't think you should take it. You should do this. Mitch Marner's not sitting there counting his money saying, oh, wow, I'm going to make this amount of money. That's not why he got into the sport. And I'll just give you one real quick, analogy of it all. Playing hockey in Germany, they would always put your age behind your name. So it would be Kerry Goulet at that time, 31. And then they would always announce all the players' salaries. So everybody knew what I made, right? Not on every program, but at the beginning of the season, people would know I signed a 2-year contract and I'm making $100,000 a year, hypothetically. And I was going to school speaking, doing speaking engagements, talking about Canada and, for the German students. My German wasn't very good, so I would throw in the odd English uh, throughout my German, which helped everybody kind of understand it. Because let's say the kids were 12 or 14 years old, and there was a very nice teacher, and she was helping me through it. And if I made a mistake, she would correct me and all that sort of stuff. And as we're going through, I'm talking about Canada, and this is where I live, and lots of snow, and igloos, and polar bears, and all that sort of stuff. And the teacher then said, "Does anybody have a question?" And this young girl puts her hand up and she says, "I'm a big hockey fan. And Mr. Goulet, I love coming to watch you play. I come with my dad, and we just love watching hockey. But I have one question for you. Why do you make more money than my dad?" And it's in German. So I'm trying to figure out what she's talking about. So I turned to the teacher and I said, "Sorry, I'm not really getting the question." And she then talks to the girl in German, asking her what the father did. So she says, "The question's coming from the young lady, and she's asking why you as a hockey player make more money than my father, who's a brain surgery surgeon at the hospital."
Yeah.
And I was dumbfounded. I had no idea. So I looked at the teacher and said, "Listen, this is I really don't have an answer, but I can put it this way and try to put it in perspective. People pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars to watch Mitch Marner play. They paid $50 to watch me play. They did it because it's entertainment. And the entertainment took that person out of their, whether it's a hectic life, if you're a brain surgeon, you know the responsibilities. You've got people's hands in your lives, or you're a truck driver. It takes you away from your day-to-day life and put it into a sporting event that can bring you elation if you win and bring you frustration if you lose. So it allows you to go out of your own skin. And I didn't obviously use that type of language, but the gist of it was people would pay, but there were 4,000 people paying $50 to watch my team play. So the team distributes that among the players. Whereas when your father goes in to operate, he's got people's lives in their hands, and he is doing it to save that person. But nobody's there to pay to watch him. And that's the only way I could think of it. So now turning that into what Mitch Marner's going through, there was a fan that said, "Where's Mitch Marner? Obviously, he's not playing. He must be at home just counting his money." What an unfair statement. And here's an answer from arguably one of my favorites, Peter Holland. He played for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He saw this comment, and this is what he wrote. "Hey, Leaf Nation, I know things aren't off to the hot start right now, and I know that's frustrating. But guess what? Mitch isn't at home counting his money. My guess, he's struggling with the amount of pressure he's putting on himself to perform so that this team will have the opportunity to entertain you and to hopefully bring you a championship. So lay off." Kudos to Peter Holland. Because Mitch Marner is given a contract of $10 million to play a sport, he should not be chastised over the money. You can chastise him over his work ethics, or that maybe he doesn't pass the puck properly, or he's not skating hard enough. But the money equation should not be brought into it. That should be put away, and he is there as a person performing his skill. And if his skill's not up to snuff, it's not because he's getting paid all that money. It's because he's got other things. He's human. Maybe, God forsake, his girlfriend broke up with him. Maybe he's got a stomach ache. Maybe he's found out one of his parents are ill. We tend to forget these people are human. So all of you Leaf fans and all of you sports fans, when you want to throw a stone, just remember there's a morning when you wake up and you don't go to work because you're sick. Mitch Marner doesn't do that. He has to perform at a high level at all times. He's under a microscope, and you sitting on your desk are not. So I really hope that people can understand that let's not judge the person by the money. Let's judge the person by the value of what he brings to the ice. And if you want to chastise him for his skill, you're more than welcome. But we should not bring the money up. Your thoughts, Pete?
Hey, it's really simple for me. It's Gooch. If I ask you this question, did you ever not want to go to the rink? if you had, to your point, if you had a struggle, if you were going through something, sure, I'm sure there were times when you didn't want to go to the rink, but this is a new season. I'm sure Mitch Marner is chomping at the bit to get back in the game. He doesn't want to be sitting on the side. And to your point, once the money's done, hey, every one of us has the option to buy tickets or not buy tickets. And, we're in a big enough city and a growing city that it's always going to be sold out. So to your point, there's going to be supply and demand issues here that are going to have people being paid a lot of money to play this sport because it is the number one thing that people want to do in their pastime. And as we've talked about before, 77% of Canadians watch sports on a weekly basis.
Yep.
33% watch it every day. This is, and the pandemic, during the pandemic when the Leafs came back on and NHL came back on, I believe it was critically important for the NHL to come back. And yes, it might have been against some of the protocols, but people needed a distraction. We needed something else to take our thoughts away from COVID-19 and the fears that were there. And that's really no different than normal life because we all go through ups and downs. But, hockey is a part of our culture. It's a part of who we are for those who watch it. And, at the end of the day, he doesn't want to be sitting on the sidelines. To your point, money is what it is because of the number of people who buy tickets and the media rights, obviously. So, we can't change things. All we can do is say, hey, is the guy, to your point, giving all he can when he's on the ice? And I think we'll see when he comes back. But I'm sure he's not sitting there counting his money.
No. And here's a good comment from Donna McCarthy. She's aging herself along with us. Norm Ullman made 100,000. Tickets were $10 for the Grays. We've created a game played by the rich for the rich. There is no way to justify these huge salaries. There isn't. But you know what? If it wasn't working and games are sold out, if people weren't prepared to pay that money, there wouldn't be those salaries because of the fact that teams couldn't afford to pay them. Listen, I want to change again the topic. We feel for Mitch Marner and the Toronto Maple Leafs. We hope that they can turn their season around. But again, people, it's a sport. It's a game. This is not life or death. To some of you Leaf fans, it is maybe because you haven't won the Stanley Cup in so long. So you're desperate and you're wanting and you're hoping. And every year the season starts off and you have this hope. It's not how you start. It's how you finish. So let's see where they end up.
But let's also throw in here, Gouche, that this is social media at its worst.
Yes, I agree.
At the end of the day, if you and me as kids were sitting around and we were chatting about the Leafs, the only people who would hear what you thought and what I thought were, the people who were within hearing distance. Social media brings out the worst in people because everybody wants to, everybody wants to be the critic who, has a stronger opinion than the last guy. And who do we follow? Who do we listen to? Or who does social media put out there most with their algorithms? They put out the people with the most extreme views because that's what people are paying attention to.
Yep.
The part of this solution is turn off your phone, is stop scrolling mindlessly through social media platforms because that's what we are being paid. They are making money by distracting us. And the more time we spend on those platforms getting engaged in these conversations, the more money that Facebook makes, Twitter makes, all these platforms make. And we just heard the lady the whistleblower, who basically said, Facebook is choosing to do things that are harming society. And I think whether it's the Toronto Maple Leafs and the anger that's being shown towards Mitch Marner, or the negativity that's being shown towards celebrities or this person or that person, the reality is, social media isn't so social, and it certainly isn't healing and bridging gaps between, communities and society. So another wake-up call for all of us when we think about the impact it's having on us.
Very, very well said. As we come close to the end of the show, there's a dark spot on the National Hockey League. There's a dark spot on society when we hear what happened to a young man named Kyle Beach. I wouldn't say I was in tears, but I was sad to know that I'm part of this family. Though I didn't play in the National Hockey League, I consider myself a family a part of a family and an institution that does good. Because for there are many, 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 many great people in this sport that give back tremendously. Unfortunately, there are times when you want to look and be embarrassed. And today's one of those days that I'm embarrassed, not embarrassed by the players, but embarrassed by the management and the people that control this incredible game called hockey. Kyle was an innocent young man that was taken advantage of by a very, very sick human being, a predator. This man, I don't even want to bring it, I won't even say his name because it's not worthy of saying. But what's unbelievable is that as the Chicago Blackhawks were vying for that Stanley Cup they hadn't brought to their city for 49 years, they took that above this story. They knew prior to winning that Stanley Cup what had happened. And then they allowed this predator to stick around their team, and he violated one of the interns. It's not so much the act as much it is people turning their eyes, turning their heads, and allowing us not to know the truth. This is 2021. This happened in 2010. We have the Sheldon Keefe, the James Graham James story, where he violated young men. And it happens every single day around this world where adults are violating our youth and taking advantage because they are above or they believe they're above. I am I don't even know where. I'm trying to think of the proper word. Scotty, the Bowman. Sorry, I've lost the train of thought on his name. The general manager who just had to pass. He had to resign. I'm a little emotional about this because I just read a story just prior to coming on. There's a gentleman named Paul Vincent. I don't know if you had a chance. I'm going to pull it up here, and I'll tell you what. This really puts it into perspective. Paul Vincent was the gentleman that was one of the skill coaches, and he knew this predator, and he knew that this had happened. And the question was to him, but from his daughter, when she brought the two young grandsons over to the house, grandchildren, and Paul Vincent is his name. He was struggling with bringing the information out. He knew there was a wrong done, but not presenting that wrong is not right, and he understood that. And he talked to his daughter about the situation, and he said, "What would you do?" And she said to him, "Here are your grandchildren. If that man would have done that, what he did to Kyle Beach, what would you do?" And he sat there for a few minutes and was in tears and said, "It would not be pretty." And so he knew he had to. And the fact that there were a lot of people that knew, players included, management included, that they turned their head and put the team before the individual is just absolutely despicable. I can't understand how people, and this ain't over, Pete. There's a lot of ramifications that are going to come from this. Joel Quenneville, the coach of the Florida Panthers, Kevin Sheveldoff in Winnipeg, the general manager. These people knew about it, and I'm sure there's going to be something done about this. And it's just putting a spot on a sport. We don't need this right now. We're living in desperation. We're living in isolation. We're living looking up to these sports. You said it. They needed something, and that's what sports given back. Love to hear your comment on. And I want to commend Kyle Beach because he was John Doe as of today, and he's come out and actually now is open to tell people about it. He was scared before because some of us wouldn't have believed him, right? I applaud him.
Yeah, I see Rosie's comment there. I think I shared with you before we got on the air. I just said no excuses. This is so clean and cut for me. You knew this had happened. You knew that this person was doing what they were doing. I don't care if you were going into the seventh game tonight. Action. You still play you still got to do this. But there should have been police called. There should have been action taken. There should have been, and that
how did they allow him there for 3 weeks after?
Yeah, And then I saw that he'd gone on and actually did this in other teams. They might even have given him a letter of recommendation.
They did do that,
which to me that is incomprehensible that you would knowingly pass this person along without the punishment that they deserve, and to be honest with you, the help they deserve as well, because it is atrocious what they did. But an eye for an eye is not the solution here. There's a punishment. Face the punishment, but also get the person the help that they need as well. But no excuse for what the Chicago Blackhawks or anybody who knew about this did.
Their chief executive officer, Danny Wirtz, I think it's Danny, if I'm not mistaken, has come out and has certainly said, I don't think it's an apology, but certainly made it aware that no team is above the individual, and he apologized what has happened. Listen, Paul, watching from the hospital, boys, had a fall in the shower. I didn't get a call from you, buddy. I'm worried about you. Fell on your hip. Good show, but are you okay? And this is Paul's team. He is a Chicago Blackhawks blue, true and blue. And look at this. This is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right, Paul. Please get better. Please make sure you give me a shout after the phone. Paul, we're thinking of you. Get well soon. And I know that you yourself, we've talked many times about these type of situations. We know the Graham James story. I was not a part of it, but it was in my era. I was sick to my stomach to hear what has happened to these young men. And now we're reliving it at a time. Listen, Sam Trapolino is joining in. Morning, gents. My wife and I are moving into a meeting with doctors to discuss my daughter's health. I love this young lady. You know her as Marnie. She is having some incredible struggles right now. I know Paul, I know myself, I know Donna, all of us, along with Pete, are praying and thinking of you guys, and we love you. And you give Marnie a big, big kiss. Everything seems insignificant into compare to this. Please love and treat each other like we might not see them tomorrow. Sending love to you all. Gouche, chat to you later. Pete, keep on going. Going on. Yesterday, I lost my sister. It was 2 years ago. I didn't even know it. My brother had to wake me up to it with a post. Thank God for Facebook, because he posted it, and it's not an anniversary that I've got marked on a calendar, and I want to remember. But we laid my sister to rest yesterday, and I felt it. I felt bad. It was just something about that day that I just didn't feel it. And I'll tell you what. I got a call today from a guy named Sam Macbeth, who also is struggling with his own health. And I've always been there for him. Anytime he needed something very similar, Paul and I were buddies, and Paul knows him very well. And he did a tribute today on his Hamilton country radio show about myself and the love for my sister. And I'll tell you, I get emotional about it. And he said, Gooch, I want you to come on. I'm going to make an announcement about your new show on our radio station. And Pete, it was absolutely breathtaking what this guy, the words he said and how he put it. And there are so many great people out there. And I think that's what Sam was saying, is that for all that we think we go through in life, don't take it for granted. And I think that's what, if anything, from the Chicago Blackhawks coming from this story, we want Kyle Beach to heal. He wasn't given the chance to play the game we love. Whether or not he can continue go back, he's going to still need psychological help. It's not about the money that he's going to probably receive for this. It's about getting him better and allowing him to continue on with his life. I'd love to hear, as we end the show, Peter, you've been with the GenWell Project. You've done so much, so good. You bring people together. What does something like this do when we read? It's a 107 pages document. The Chief Executive Officer Wirtz said he was absolutely hurt by what he read in these documents. Is this a rallying cry for us as humans to wake up and understand that we're part of this issue, and that we need to be more attentive? That we can't just pass our kids on to the system and hope that they come out. We have to be more aware. Is that something you think we can learn from this?
Well, I think this goes really down into the roots of what the GenWell Project is all about. If we are a more connected society, if we know one another, they say extremism comes from, isolation and loneliness, because people find those individuals, whether it's on the internet or usually the internet, where we find people that have extremist views, and therefore they are the only ones that are willing to befriend us because we're lonely and isolated, and
Right. Good
whether it's
point.
because we're shy or we're fearful or whatever, we don't build those relationships. And I think what we've and I say this a lot when I speak in businesses and community groups, Gooch, I just say, look, over the last 50, 60 years, we've created the most individualistic society in history. When I
Yep.
was a kid, Mrs. King down the street
Yeah.
always reported to my mom when I did something wrong on the street. It was honestly like she was looking out the window 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And when I put my fingers into the new concrete sidewalk that the city laid and put my initials in it, my mom knew before I walked in the house. And so we had a world in which we were more connected. But let's understand, the world has changed. We've got technology, we've got all these platforms, we've got cameras, we've got this, that, and the other. There's more distraction. We got two working parents who don't get the chance to spend time with their neighbors, with their friends. The kids don't get to come outside and play because there's never 10 kids on the street. We are living in a different world. And the reality is, if we want to solve for this, it starts by getting to know each other. It
Yep.
starts by having conversations with your neighbor. It starts like by mending bridges with people that you something went wrong, and for some reason you didn't maintain that relationship. Consider whether that's worthy of losing that friendship. It's about getting to know people in all walks of life, people like you and people not like you. That's how
Yep.
we build a society where we do care about each other, where we have empathy and compassion, and where we want to help each other. And when we walk out on the street as a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old, or a 20-year-old, or a senior walking down the street, everybody's there, encouraging that person and looking out for that person, because
Yep.
God forbid, if anything happens, we'll be there for them. But right now, and hopefully the pandemic is the wake-up call. Hopefully we all, because we've gone through this shared experience, we've all seen inside each other's home through Zoom meetings. Hopefully we all wake up and recognize, hey, we're all just human beings, and shit happens to all of us. There's ups, there's downs, and so we're all human. Nobody's perfect. But if we actually come together and build and heal some of these wounds and these divides that are between us as a society, maybe we can make the world a happier and healthier place for everybody.
Well, Pete, I could not say it better. I just love your perspective. And of course, the GenWell Project is deep in our hearts. Thank you for being a part of Wellness Wednesday. I look forward to next week. I know you're going to bring an extra special guest from the GenWell Project with you. I'm really, really looking forward to that.
Me too, brother. I'm looking forward to getting together with you every week and having Donna McCarthy, Robert Wine, Michael Koss, Sam Trapolino, the crew here every week, being a part of this conversation, because this is how we stay connected during
You
these
got it.
these crazy times.
Pete Bombaci, the GenWell Project. Thanks for joining us, buddy. Look
Thanks,
forward to seeing you
Kerry.
next week. Okay,
Enjoy the
buddy.
game tonight.
I will. I'm going to watch it for you, buddy.
I'm
I'm
going to watch
cheering.
right
Go
now.
Leafs, go.
Go. Can you say that again one more time?
Go Leafs, go.
Nice, buddy. That's good. That sounded like you cared.
You got it.
See
Okay, buddy. Bye-bye.
ya.
Pete Bombaci, the GenWell Project. Love him. He's fantastic. I want to thank Terry Rivard, Fired Up Network. We've got lots of great things coming up, not only for Connected, a mental health initiative, Concussed, Understanding the Invisible Injury, and of course, the GenWell Project with Pete Bombaci. I want to do a shout out again. Paul, please get better quickly. Let us know if there's anything we can do for you. Sam, we are all thinking and praying for our young Marnie. We love you, love her. And of course, Donna, thank you for always being there and supporting us. You've been great. And my buddy Robert Wine and my new buddy, Michael Koss. We're going to get him on the show. He's a very inspirational man. All right, you've been watching Wellness Wednesday right here, brought to you by the good people at Connected, at the GenWell Project, and of course, Fired Up Network. We'll see you next week, Wednesday. Do not miss it.